It's the season of change for the Indianapolis Colts as we usher in the era of Sling and Sammy Ehlinger. We dive in on that and more on today's episode of Locked On Colts. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your number one listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is Jake Arthur alongside Zach Hicks. You know the two of us from horseshoehuddle.com. That's right. Today we're going to fully immerse ourselves in the Sam Ehlinger era of Indianapolis Colts football. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, Zach did a piece. Today's Tuesday. He did a piece today. Kind of just looking at what the Colts offense might look like now that they've got an inexperienced quarterback in Sam Ehlinger, but one who's obviously much more mobile than his predecessor in Matt Ryan. So Zach, why don't you go ahead and kind of break it down? What do you think are the main things we're going to see this offense resemble, or what at least we think makes sense?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting that, by the way, I mean, moving from Matt Ryan to Sam Ehlinger after trading a third-round pick for him, after spending all that money on Matt Ryan, after saying all offseason, like, this is the leader we need, this is the guy we need, and preparing for playing with a pocket passer, a guy who's been in the league for, 15 years. It is absolutely absurd that they did this after 7 games, but we have to kind of adjust. And you guys could see in our reaction episode yesterday that we were kind of a little bit more lively because this is just a different era of Colts football now. That it's not just that mediocrity and settling for being boring. It's going to be some fun. So one thing that I want to stipulate with a lot of things I'm going to say is it is tough when you go into the season with the game plan and the mindset of installing an offense for a pocket passer, and then you're just inserting a scrambler, or a guy who survives in chaos. That's kind of what Sam Ehlinger is. Like, yes, he can operate within structure, but the reason why you're starting him is because he can find success outside of structure, or hopefully find success outside of structure. So I don't know how much of a playbook they're really going to have ready for Sam Ehlinger, unless they were kind of always prepared for something like this. So I don't know. But one thing I feel very confident in saying is going to be coming back to this offense in a very, there's going to be a lot of this in the offense is the return of RPOs. There's going to be a lot of RPOs coming back. And we've seen every time that Frank Reich has had a, quasi-athletic quarterback back there, Andrew Luck was a great athlete. They did a lot of RPOs with Andrew Luck back in 2018, like tons and tons of them, especially in the red zone, and why that offense was one of the best red zone offenses in all of football. And then Jacoby Brissett in 2019, they did keep a lot of that RPO game. Now, Jacoby Brissett's not really much of a running threat, and he's not the quickest decision maker, but he can move a little bit and he can run through some contact. And then again with Carson Wentz in 2021, when he came to Indy, they did a lot of RPOs because that's what Frank Reich did with him in Philly a lot. So we'll see a lot of RPOs with Sam Ehlinger, which I think is really good for him. You're a young quarterback. You're going to get a lot of kind of the one read RPO where you're just kind of watching that one linebacker or that one slot corner and seeing exactly what their reaction is to you, showing the ball like a handoff. And then that determines your entire read on that play. There's not reading middle of the field closed or middle of the field open or reading, what kind of drops the corners or anything like that. It's just the one read and then you either throw or hand it off. So I think that's something that a first-time starter in the NFL can survive with. And we've always seen the RPO game with Frank Reich's offense. So if I had to bet on one thing, 100% coming back in a very heavy way, it's going to be the RPO. It is 100% coming back to this Colts offense.
Do you think that opens up things and finally makes the field more operable for Jonathan Taylor now that he's going to have a somewhat similar plan to what he had last year when he absolutely exploded?
Yeah, and I actually think that goes to my next point of what I was saying. And this is more of a I'm hoping rather than what I think will happen. But I want to see more design QB runs. We've never really seen that in the Frank Reich era. I can count maybe on one hand the amount of times that they called a design QB run for Andrew Luck, or they definitely called more for Jacoby Brissett than any other quarterback. But Jacoby Brissett's still he's not that great an athlete. I'm not saying Sam Ehlinger is going to be this otherworldly athlete, but he can move a little bit better than Jacoby Brissett can. But I want to see some more designed runs and some guys I've looked at in the past. Taylor Heineke in Washington when he came in last year, he got some designed runs. Tyler Huntley in Baltimore, a lot of designed runs because they've kept that offense kind of the same as Lamar Jackson. And then obviously the one that you really want to talk about is Daniel Jones this season. Daniel Jones, the bust of a pick for the New York Giants, a guy that nobody really knew what to do with out there. Is turnover prone, struggling. Brian Daboll gets out there and makes him the Walmart version of Josh Allen. It's a lot of designed runs. And, for all the hate Daniel Jones gets, and I'm not even saying he's a franchise quarterback, but he's playing pretty well this year. He has 58 runs this season in 7 games. And I would wager a good 30 of them are designed. Lots and lots of just QB reads, read options. I'm not saying that they're going fully back to the 2012 Washington Redskins, with the read option every other play. But they're doing a lot of read options. They're doing some actual QB power and QB draws and stuff like that, where Daniel Jones is picking up 9, 10, 11 yards and then sliding down and avoiding hits. I'm not saying that Sam Ehlinger can be as effective as Daniel Jones, but when I watch that, I see potential not only for Sam Ehlinger to get those free yards and stay ahead of the sticks, but also, this could help the Colts running game because every time they have to account for another person, they have to account for that quarterback running or that quarterback throwing on these read options or RPOs. That makes your linebackers have to, if the linebackers have to sit there and think for even half a second, they're already losing the battle. So I think when you insert a guy like Sam Ehlinger into an offense that has been just putrid this season, just adding an RPO aspect or adding a quarterback run aspect, it kind of loosens up those tight defenses that the Colts have been seeing. So I don't know if they're going to draw up a lot of designed runs for Sam Ehlinger, but look, you have a 6th-round quarterback coming in, a 6th-round guy in his 2nd year. The odds of him ever being anything in the NFL are so low. Why not just throw the most creative things you can with him? If he takes some hits, he takes some hits. This is probably his best way of succeeding, though. And it's the best way of this offense succeeding. So just throw the whole kitchen sink at it. And I think a lot of designed QB runs is the way to do it. And I really, really hope that, again, this whole offseason, you're planning for a pocket passer. So it's really tough to kind of install all that right now. But I hope they can get some QB runs in, like read options and stuff with Sam Ehlinger, because I think that could be an area where he and the Colts offense can really succeed in.
Yeah, that definitely sounds good. And I think another area I was hoping or thinking that might open up is just the downfield passing game. I think he's shown himself to be a little aggressive, but also when plays break down, he's better equipped to keep those plays alive, and that's often in the NFL when downfield shots are taken. But I'd have to guess defenses are probably going to blitz the heck out of him, at least until they see how he responds. And so if you take away an extra defensive back out of the secondary or something, that maybe leaves Pittman or Pierce, especially Pierce, one-on-one downfield. So that's something I really want to see is there going to be more deep shots? Because when you mix this quarterback change with Michael Pittman, his comments after the game, and then Marcus Brady as well on Tuesday said, we intended on having more downfield action and it just didn't happen that way.
Right.
I would expect to see Ehlinger test this Washington secondary. It seems like they probably want it to happen.
Yeah, honestly, what I would really tell Ehlinger, because again, 6th-round guy who is probably not going to be much of anything in the NFL, statistically speaking. I'm not saying anything bad about Sam Ehlinger here. I know you guys are really high on him right now, and I'm excited for him too. I would honestly tell him if a defense is showing blitz or you're seeing single coverage on the outside, just throw a fade to Pittman Jr. or Alec Pierce. I don't care if it's incomplete. I don't care if it's intercepted. Give your guys a chance. I just want to see those balls go down the field to those guys. So I think that's a huge thing. And then obviously, again, the broken plays, the extended plays, for all the things that Matt Ryan is better at quarterback than Sam Ehlinger, the one thing that Ehlinger, I feel really confident saying is going to be better than Matt Ryan at is when he gets contacted in the pocket, there's a better chance of Sam Ehlinger getting away from that contact and creating some magic afterwards. I'm not saying that there's always going to be magic or it's going to be something great, but Matt Ryan, it just looked like a struggle every time he had to move around outside of that pocket, where Sam Ehlinger is more comfortable in that area. And I mean, broken plays and extended pockets and scrambles are some of the highest EPA per plays that you can have. So having a mobile quarterback that can do that or has the potential to do something like that, especially with this offensive line where those are going to be like almost every single pass play, you want to have a mobile quarterback who can do that. So again, I'm not saying Sam Ehlinger is going to be an upgrade by any means over Matt Ryan. For all we know, the Colts offense can go from averaging 11 points per game to 4 points per game. Like, we don't know where, what this is going to go, but I do think we're going to see a drastically different offense. And, it is something that you have to experiment with when your offense has been this putrid.
Yeah, it can get worse, but like not a lot.
Not much.
It can look bad in a different way, but I mean, let it rip, Sam. You're right. Yeah. Like, what do you have to lose there? There's obviously plenty to like about this quarterback move that the Colts made, and there's also plenty to like about our next sponsor as well. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs help find the right people for your team faster and for free. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and expertise so that you can quickly prioritize who you actually want to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Fellas, Bird Dogs just launched sweatpants. They're crazy comfy, and it's like you're wearing pillows on your legs. It is fall golf season after all, so while you may not like Tiger, you feel just as good. Bird Dogs joggers are higher quality than Lululemon, and $20 less. What are we talking about here, guys? Go buy some Bird Dogs. Still wear shorts in the winter? Doesn't matter if it's the Florida heat or 10 degrees in Chicago. They have their signature shorts with built-in liners. They're the most comfortable shorts in existence. Go to birddogs.com, enter promo code LOCKEDON, and they'll throw in a free Bird Dogs rope hat. That's birddogs.com, promo code LOCKEDON, and boom, a free Bird Dogs rope hat with your pair of Bird Dogs. The most comfortable shorts, pants, and sweatpants with built-in liners. You will not take these things off, I promise you.
Not even to wash them.
Not even to wash them. You'd be like, oh, I just realized I'm wearing the same shirt as yesterday's show. Jake, let's tell all the people that we just recorded shows right after each other. Okay, let's just say
sure.
You changed shirts in between. I didn't feel like it. That's what we'll say. But anyway, let's talk about this next segment here, because after Monday, we went into this week being like, okay, we're going to do a whole week's worth of just blow it up. Blow it up. That's going to be our entire week of podcasts, is us going scorched earth and blowing up everything with this Indianapolis Colts team, because we were just tired and we were done. And then Sam Ehlinger obviously had to take over our show and become everything going forward. But we are still kind of in that blowing up mindset where, look, I'm not saying that they need to trade every single player that's above 25. I'm not saying this is a full-on rebuild where you tear everything down, but I do think the Colts at next week's deadline need to consider being sellers, because they need to undergo a little bit of a retooling. They have some good players, and I'm not saying just dump every single good player, but if there's a player on this team that you don't see being here within like the next year or the next 2 years, it's time to retool and get what you can for these guys. So I'm not saying fire sell, but I'm saying kind of close to it. I think that you do need to consider being sellers at this deadline, especially, you're rolling young at quarterback. You should probably roll young at some other positions and just see what you got.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think there's plenty of guys who could get you some draft capital, because number one, quarterback, you cannot mess around with this anymore. The leash doesn't exist anymore. It does not. I'm sure Irsay has said the exact same thing. You have to go into this offseason, or prepared to accomplish in the offseason, having the necessary assets to go get your long-term quarterback. Right. If you think it's Sam after this second half of the season, sweet, but that cannot be the plan. Like, Sam Ehlinger cannot. No. Like, that's a great bonus if it happens, but they have to be prepared to find their guy. And that means shelling out some players possibly for draft picks. You'd done a piece on this. I think it was Monday.
Mhm.
You circled some guys who could probably have some trade value. Yannick Ngakoue is an example.
Yeah, that's the most obvious one.
Mm-hmm.
I think if Washington or if Indy drops this next game to Washington, I think I mean either way I think I would trade Yannick Ngakoue, but I think if they drop this game to Washington, I do think they need to sell him pretty quick after that game because look, I was excited about Yannick Ngakoue coming to this season. I think all of us were. He was supposed to be the savior at pass rush. But what we've kind of got this season is a guy on a 1-year contract, so he's probably not going to be here next year, who is currently the 4th lowest graded run defending edge according to Pro Football Focus. So one of the worst run defending edges in the entire league. And then he's also 50th in pass rush win rate. So you kind of have a below average pass rusher and a putrid run defender is kind of what you're looking at. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to be able to sell that for high. There's not going to be teams lining up for that. But I do think on name value alone, you probably could get, an early day 3 or mid day 3 pick for him. And honestly, again, if you're rolling with Sam Ehlinger and you want to roll young, I mean, what's the benefit for Yannick Ngakoue taking all of Dio Dangbo or Tyquan Lewis snaps? I'm not saying either of those guys are the answer, but get them snaps. I don't really care for Yannick Ngakoue snaps if he's not going to be here going forward. So, when I'm talking sell at the deadline, I think that's one move that almost certainly has to be made. These other ones I'm not as sure about, and I don't really care as much if they make those moves, but I do think personally selling Yannick Ngakoue would make the most sense for this team here at the deadline.
Yeah, and I also want to preface this before we get through the rest of them that I think it's uncharacteristic of Chris Ballard to be like a big seller at trade deadlines. Number one,
or big buyer,
yeah,
way, yeah.
He's not a guy where like deadlines spur panicked actions. Like he's very calculated in everything he does. He obviously sticks to his plan, but we also don't know what was conveyed from that last conversation with Jim Irsay. But yeah, this next guy we're going to talk about, tight end Mo Alley-Cox. Now, he's been almost non-existent in the passing game. He had one really good game, but Kylan Granson and Jelani Woods have been much more effective in how they've been used. The thought was that Mo, I guess, would take over the Jack Doyle role, but as we last examined when we talked about him, it hasn't really gone to plan as far as blocking goes. So when you factor in that as a blocker, he hasn't really met the mark, and these two other guys have really far surpassed him in the passing game. Another team could salvage something from Mo Alley-Cox, and you could probably get a late mid-round pick for him.
Yeah, that's the only question mark. $6 million per year for the next 2 years for a tight end who really hasn't been productive this season. I think that could be a tough sell for other teams, but there is potential there. Mo Alley-Cox is a fine player. He has struggled a little bit this season, but I do think there is some value for other teams. But yeah, my main mention of him in that article was, look, the future is now at tight end. The future is now. It is Kylan Granson and Jelani Woods. This offseason, they need to go out of their way to get a blocking tight end to go with those two. But the future is those two players. I don't like Mo Alley-Cox just isn't in my future plans personally. So that's why I would throw Mo Alley-Cox in that.
Yeah, and then these next two you had on here were pretty interesting to me. I'll start at linebacker with Bobby Okereke because they have options. All these guys have flashed this year. Leonard, it's not going to happen. He's too expensive, and he really hasn't played this year. So teams at that price probably aren't begging for a guy who we don't know what his injury risk is moving forward. But you have Bobby Okereke there. Zaire Franklin is another option, even though he's a strong leader in the locker room, and EJ Speed as well. But Okereke is the guy we're circling here.
Yeah, and this one was mostly due to the fact that Bobby Okereke is a free agent after the season. They have money tied up in Zaire Franklin now and in Shaquille Leonard, and EJ Speed's their young guy that they've been bringing along. And I think EJ Speed's also a free agent, but I think he's restricted, if I remember, or maybe it's something like that. But EJ Speed, I think, is also a free agent that they, could probably lock up for a lot cheaper than Bobby Okereke. But yeah, it was mostly a money thing. The Colts have a lot of money tied up at linebacker going into the next season. They have a lot of money tied up, and elsewhere that aren't great contracts. So, money might be a little tight. And Bobby Okereke, again, very much doubt that they would sell him at the deadline. Like that's a move that really kills a locker room. If your locker room is already in trouble right now, like that's one that really kills it. But I do think Bobby Okereke is a phenomenal player. I just don't know if it makes the most sense for like a retooling team to give him, he might be looking at, $14-15 million a year contract, or, I mean, it's definitely gonna be 10 plus on the open market. So, it might be like a Rocky Sin's situation where, Rocky Sin's a good player, but the reason why they dealt him is because they didn't plan on paying him after this upcoming season. So that's why they dealt him. And obviously it was not a great deal, but, it's why they dealt him. So, I don't think they trade Bobby Okereke. I personally wouldn't trade Bobby Okereke, but it's something that I kind of had to throw out there because it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, the ingredients are there. Like, I don't think they personally would want to, but financially, that's a lot of money to sock into one linebacker group, which is considered a non-essential group, linebackers. This last one you had here, I think, is the most interesting. This guy's been worth every penny they paid this offseason, but long-term plans, he's probably not there. And he has kind of revived interest around the league, I would think, is Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah, and again, this is another one where personally I would not trade Stephon Gilmore, but when you're looking at a guy on the other side of 30, a team that's rolling with a very unknown young quarterback, he was signing on to be with a team that was going to push for the playoffs and maybe push for a deep playoff run. This is more of doing a favor to a player who probably deserves to be on a championship caliber team at this point in his career. So, I could see him being shopped around or even dealt, but I don't know. I do think that's a tough one to do there too, because you do have him for next year on contract. And if you are just doing like a mini retooling, you'd love to have a cornerback one on that deal. So I think this is one where Stephon Gilmore comes to Ballard and says I'd like to be moved to, a contender type team. I think you do it for him, but otherwise, no, I would not do that one. But I did add that because again, the ingredients are there. It's just, we don't know. Again, it's hard to be a seller in the NFL. Trades rarely happen mid-season unless you're the Los Angeles Rams or the San Francisco 49ers. But those are just some guys to keep an eye on who I think maybe if the Colts wanted to be sellers, they could sell those guys.
Yeah, that's and we'll also reiterate that we have no knowledge of Gilmore being involved in that. That's just a total hypothetical. But the Colts made a wise pickup with him. Another wise pickup that you might be able to wager this week. With a new quarterback, we don't totally know what the Colts are going to do offensively against the Commanders, but Prize Picks has set Jonathan Taylor's rushing yardage at 78.5 yards this week. More? Less? What do you guys think? We don't know because he really has not been on fire this year, but they may want to get back to the grindstone with him. He looked pretty good last week. It's super easy to make picks like that with Prize Picks, whether it's on the app or the computer. Just pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their projection, then you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch, including the NFL, the MLB playoffs, the new NBA season, and tons more. Your entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Withdrawing your earnings is also safe and easy, and PrizePicks is currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, now we are not done playing the hypothetical game here. If you follow Zach on Twitter, which I'm sure you do if you listen to our show, he throws out a lot of what ifs and things he would look at if this happens. So obviously Frank Reich has to be considered on the hot seat. I think a lot of people at this point think he might be on the outs after this season if things don't improve drastically. So, in the event if Frank is let go and the Colts are on the lookout for another new head coach, there's some intriguing young options out there. Zach he's already been hitting up his binder of secrets and guys that he would like to look at. So, Zach, what type of coach are you looking for, and what are some of the candidates for you?
Well, obviously, I'm gonna be like everyone in Colts Nation. I'm gonna trade all the picks for Sean Payton.
Don't say Sean Payton.
That's what everyone keeps messaging me. Oh, throw all the money and the picks at Sean Payton. I'm like, look, guys, they need all the picks they can for a potential quarterback. Unless, again, perfect world, Sam Ehlinger is awesome. But outside of that, Sean Payton's not going to want to come to Indy anyway. He'd rather go to LA with Justin Herbert. But there are, like you said, a lot of very intriguing, offensive coordinators around the league. Let's go down crazy hypothetical world. Let's do it. Okay. Let's get really weird with it. Sam Ehlinger plays really well, and the Colts are picking 15th or 16th in the draft. So you're kind of out of quarterback range. Like, you still could take a quarterback, but say you're like, okay, probably next year we're going to just work on this retool, and Sam Ehlinger is going to be our quarterback for the next season. Even if we do have a rookie kind of behind him, like ready to take over whenever. I think the two guys that you'd want to pair with that type of mobile quarterback are Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator in Philly, or Mike Kafka, the offensive coordinator with the New York Giants. Those two have been phenomenal with their mobile quarterbacks and kind of drawing up offenses for them. So I think those are some innovative young guys who really could bring that extra edge to that quarterback position. And then another one, obviously, the guy who's going to be getting every single head coaching offer this offseason is Ken Dorsey with Buffalo. He's going to get every single one. So, for everyone who wants Sean Payton, I think those are three guys that I would rather look at. And then if you're looking at defensive guys, DeMeco Ryans and San Fran, I think that's, if you guys want like the inverse of Frank Reich, if you want like a hard-nosed football guy who's also is, crafts is a really innovative defense, you really want a DeMeco Ryans type there. So those are guys that I would really like. I think Chris Ballard might go a different way if I had to wager, but those are some guys I really like. Again, Shane Steichen, Mike Kafka, then obviously Kent Dorsey would probably be my top three.
Yeah, these aren't younger guys by any means, but I would also be interested to see if Leslie Frazier would get another interview. Right. He interviewed when Frank Reich was up for the job, and Jim Caldwell as well. Caldwell's been, in the shadows. He hasn't been getting as much attention as he probably should around the league again. But I think in this instance, the Colts would be interested in looking at it, especially if they're trying to keep at it with an offensive-minded head coach. I think Caldwell makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I like Caldwell a lot. He's had success everywhere he's gone. So yeah, I'd be a huge fan of Jim Caldwell coming back. But I think when you look at like Chris Ballard, and I think if you look at everything that this Colts team has kind of done since the retirement of Andrew Luck, it's kind of like they wanted to be the Titans. They've always wanted to be the Titans ever since Andrew Luck retired. They want to win by running the ball, controlling the football, and having a dominant defense. And I think part of that was, Chris Ballard kind of having fear of missing out when he took Josh McDaniel. He picked Josh McDaniels over Mike Vrabel. Those were his final two in the first time around, and he chose Josh McDaniels over Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel obviously is a Coach of the Year candidate every single season and gets the Tennessee Titans somehow to the 1 seed every year. But I think that he's going to kind of overcorrect and try to go back to what he missed in Mike Vrabel. So I think a Leslie Frazier makes a lot of sense for what he's going to look at. Leslie Frazier is a similar type of guy, a guy who's been around, who's coached a really innovative defense there in Buffalo. So we could see that. I think another one that I kind of joked about on Twitter, but I legit think that there could be some smoke there if he doesn't get the Carolina job after the year, is Steve Wilks. Steve Wilks has had one chance at it in the NFL. He went 3-13 with Josh Rosen as his quarterback. But if you look at his history too, he overlapped with Chris Ballard in Chicago. He's a defensive-minded guy who's done pretty, he's been fine in Carolina, nothing crazy. And then you saw their huge win over the Buccaneers this past week. That was kind of, that big rah-rah huge win, the motivator. So I don't know. I think those are ways that Ballard could go. I'm not saying he's obviously 100% going to go a defensive coordinator type. I'm also not saying 100% that Frank Reich is fired, but I do think Frank Reich is on the lava seat right now. I think he's currently disintegrating into the lava on how hot that seat is that he is sitting on. And outside of Sam Ehlinger just being the second coming of Tom Brady, I don't think Frank Reich will be safe. But I'm really curious to see what Chris Ballard's approach would be to hiring a next head coach if he is the guy who is hiring him, because we saw from Chris Ballard's first time around, the list was kind of very hit or miss. Mike Vrabel, Leslie Frazier, I think were fine. Frank Reich obviously was fine for most of this tenure. But then you had Josh McDaniels, Matt Rule, Matt Nagy, I think was on there, which, they
Dan
all got
Campbell.
Dan Campbell. I actually like Dan Campbell. So,
I'd put him in the pros column.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it'd go either way. I don't know if you could really find too much of a trend in those guys that he picked, but if he gets a second chance at this, it'll be tough because you have to convince a head coach of who people want to come to Indy, where you might have a lame duck GM and a smaller market. So I don't know if Chris Ballard will get the chance to hire the next head coach, but it could be a very interesting offseason if he does.
Yeah, if anything, if we've learned anything this week, it's that the rest of the season will be very interesting, as you say. It seems like with Ryan being pulled after 7 weeks, no one's job security really exists anymore. So
right, but I will say the positive though, real quick. I interrupt you. The comments are going to come after me, but I will say the positive is we went from it being a very boring season to now it's a very interesting season. So I'll take it.
I'm into it, yeah, because there's nothing worse than just sitting there like. There's been so many times where I've just sat here watching, whether it's in the press box or here in my home office, where I'm like, this is the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. At least it's going to be chaotic fun. I think we can both agree with that.
We're just going to be blasting some MCR, I'm Not Okay in the background while we're watching. But now we can blast some really some really fun music because it's just going to be a blast the rest of the year. Good or bad.
Upbeat emo music this time.
There we go.
So there you have it. We talked about, what this offense might look like with Sam Ehlinger. Some guys the Colts might be able to ship out of town to accrue assets for the next quarterback. And then in the hypothetical situation that Frank Reich is no longer the head coach after the season, who might be good candidates to replace him. So again, that's it for us. We'll be back with you guys on Thursday for Crossover Thursday with the crew covering the Washington Commanders.
Make sure you guys are following us on social media at Jake Arthur NFL, at Zach Hicks 2, and at Locked On Colts, all on Twitter. Also, subscribe to our shows on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And thanks again for making Locked On Colts your first listen every day. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. They just had Jake on there Tuesday morning talking about Ehlinger and Ryan. So if you want to see that lovely mug right there, I mean, that's what you got to check out right there. From the games that matter most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only that Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. We will see you guys on Thursday.